The mechanical and controlled burns in section 16, do you know of any costs that were associated with those? What did that cost the county?
You know, I'm not sure exactly what that cost the county, but I know that's part of the hesitation with mechanical thinning and controlled burning. It's costly to bring crews with chainsaws out there and remove the branches and remove that material, and to have enough crews available to execute a controlled burn safely. And so I can't speak to the cost specifically. I wish I could, and I will look into that. But it's a costly operation as well as one that people are pretty resistant to. I know on Section 16 there are a lot of areas that showed evidence of controlled burn in the past, but a lot of that had been traded for mechanical thinning because there were complaints from residents that didn't like the smoke and that didn't like the crews out there working. And so mechanical thinning is a little bit of a second choice to controlled burning. Both are extremely important, but also costly. And so that's certainly a consideration to make, and I'll look into how expensive that is.
And so what was the difference between the areas that had been previously burned to the mechanical thinning after the fire?
Well, fortunately, there's a similar outcome there because the controlled burning will clear out the understory. It'll clear out the layer of pine needles that's accumulating on the forest floor. It will take down some of the smaller trees and some of the smaller shrubs, which serve as ladder fuels that take the fire from the ground up into the canopy of the trees. And so the controlled burning will help remove some of those. The mechanical thinning does much the same thing. This is what we did on our property. It's really the way forward for private landowners on their property. It will help remove some of that thick, tangled brush layer, preventing the fire from going from the ground into the tops of the trees. And so there ended up being very similar outcomes on the property as far as how it reacted to the fire.
There's an interesting area on McAllister Road, which is right in the middle of the Bastrop fire. About 2 or 3 years before the complex fire, there was an accidental fire that burned there for about 30 acres. And I don't think it burned any houses, but it burned a pretty good sized pasture, and there were a lot of dead trees. Well, now after the Bastrop complex fire came through, if you drive down McAllister, there's this one area that doesn't look as bad as the rest of it. It's that area that burned 5 or 6 years ago.
I would be really fascinated to take a look at that because I've seen the same thing. I mean, especially out in Black Forest where I spent most of my time. While I was at school in the woods, my spring field project topic was actually not bird studies. At that time, it was ponderosa pine studies. So we were using increment bores to take the age of the trees and doing a number of things, studying the health of the trees, but we also took a look at the interface between the trees and fire. And so we looked at areas of the property that had not been subject to controlled burns and areas that had been. And the comparison between those two was pretty stark. The areas that were not, because there were parts of Section 16 that were not as well managed, the areas that were not as well managed were full of unhealthy trees, crowded, tangled, unhealthy trees, so much brush on the ground, pine needles that had built up. It was too dense, and it was not a healthy forest. And so seeing that area burn in the Black Forest fire, those were the parts of the property that burned more severely and more destructively. The areas that had been subject to controlled burns in the past were the ones that burned very, very cleanly and looked really beautiful and healthy afterward. So I would be very interested to take a look at that land because it's such a stark difference between.
I'll try to pinpoint where.
Okay, thank you.
My understanding from talking to the firefighters here in Bastrop, trying to get as much information about mechanical clearing, because that's the best option for us on our 5 acres, is to reduce the height of any of the underbrush and limb up as much as you can the trees to create that gap between the two. Is there any other information about the mechanical clearing that you could add to that? Or?
Yeah, I think that really is the most important part. I think everything I've heard about it is the most important thing to do is to separate the ground level from the canopy level and to prevent that fire from getting into the canopy of the trees. And that's exactly what we did on our property. We trimmed a lot of the lower, especially the dead limbs on the trees, to a height that was high enough that the fire wouldn't ideally reach it. A lot of it was cleaning out sort of the dog hair thickets where there's just a dense clump of trees that burns pretty hot and can reach up into the canopy of the trees, so we tried to clear out most of those. A lot of the time the smaller trees will get very, very overcrowded, and so removing those. And another thing that we put some effort into was removing some of that dense pine needle layer on the ground, because that can burn pretty quickly and pretty hot. And so the effort really was to prevent the fire from reaching the canopy and to prevent it from burning, from having so much fuel that it would burn really intensely.
Anything else? Well, I was just going to add one more comment. I don't know if anybody's a member of this already, but just in case, there's a South Central Texas Prescribed Burn Association. And for like $30 a month or something, you can become a member, and if you go and you help on a couple of other, and it's all private land burning, if you help on a couple of other burns, they come and will burn your land for free as part of the, well, free, but part of your membership. So, and I've been looking into if anybody else is interested in that.
Thank you so much. That's really, really something I wish I had heard about, and I'm happy that I heard about now, because that's such a positive development. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, Google it.
I will. Yes.
I was just going to mention that one of our members, she's not here right now, Michael Hubbard, she's actually a trainer for Firewise training.
Wow, okay.
And I've taken one of her classes. I know we're not a Firewise community yet, but that training does happen in Bastrop.
I would love to have been a part of that. I unfortunately.
Spoke to us a couple of times.
Yeah. Okay.
After the complex fire, some lady came in and read us the riot act. Because she was really distraught about what a devastation it was. And so she came and talked to us and said, were any of you guys affected by the fire? And probably 6 to 10 people raised their hand. And she said she was so sorry. And then the rest of us, she just lambasted us and said, you need to, really take it to heart. And so it's something that's near and dear to our hearts. We've been out at the state parks, helping whenever they do a prescribed burn, trying to protect some of the young pines and things like that also.
I would love to be a part of that. It's so important. That's something that I wish that I missed out in Black Forest. I had to move during that process of recovery, and so when the Firewise community started being established there, I missed out on that, and so I would love to.
Yeah.
It's your fault.
Isn't it always?
Well, thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much.